I'm just showing off the progress of my mural. I'm really loving these herons. I'm glad I decided to put a couple of them here. There's a textured background, which I do with a plastic wrap technique that I created, and I will share that with you in a minute for those of you who are interested in trying that out. And got some water lilies, and these are some mustard plants, and a couple of fish, dragonfly, sunset. It's really difficult to photograph this because number one, it's kind of large, and number two, it's got metal leaf in it, which the luminosity of it is something that you really can't capture in photographs very easily, which is why I like using videos so that you can kind of see something about that luminescence that's in these layers. And these are painted on wood, and then the sky has silver metallic leaf, the landscape has gold metallic leaf, and I'm doing layers of oil paint on top of it, and I'm still working on this. Some of it has not been fleshed out completely. I'm just kind of working on my ideas as they come to me. I have a really hard time, sometimes I have a hard time starting projects because I don't know where to go. I almost have too many ideas sometimes, and so I just have to start with whatever idea I have in my head. So in this case, I started with the water lilies, partially because the first part of the mural, which is two panels that are on another wall, was of a landscape that included a tree, and there was a river in the foreground, and so I decided to continue the river around and start with water lilies. I like the idea of water lilies growing from the mud and water, and dragonfly and a sunset, since it's going to be on the west wall. And then I did these plants, did this background that I think is really gorgeous, and it was originally one heron, decided to make it into two, and some cattails. So I'm going to flesh this out, add some more plants, and right now I just figured I'd show you how I create this textured background. It's something I really love to do for one thing, it kind of liberates my mind. I don't have to fill in all the spaces with all my controlled details, all these very fanatical details that I tend to do. I can just let a texture stand in for an imaginary landscape that I feel allows people to kind of imagine into the landscape a little bit more. So here we go. I'm going to I've already created a mix of paint that's using, this is a sap green, and this is cyan blue, and I'm doing this in oil paint primarily because I want the transparency of that gold or silver metallic leaf shining through. And you can get transparency with acrylic too, but I find oil is a little bit more transparent. And then the other reason I'm using oil instead of acrylics is because I have a much longer working time before it dries. And so if I decide I don't like something, I can wipe it off, whereas with acrylics, of course, you cannot do that. So, and I've mixed up, this paint has, it's about half of this Galkid light medium and half turpentine. If I was doing this with acrylic paints, I would instead be mixing it with acrylic glazing medium. It doesn't have to be Liquitex, it could be another brand, and water. So oil medium is similar in how it works as glazing medium is, and turpentine is similar as how water would work with acrylic, just so you know. And I've already torn off some plastic wrap and I use both the plastic wrap from like saran wrap, and I also use trash bags. They give you different textures, and so you just kind of have to learn what works for different surfaces. But right now I'm going to use the saran wrap, and I've just dipped my brush into that medium that's a glazing medium with the turpentine, And I'm just going to, as quickly as I can, get this over the surface. I'm trying to avoid these pods, but it's not going to be perfect, so I'm just going to have to come back and erase some of this probably. Of course, this part, the painted area of the plant, has to be dry before I do this, because when I put the plastic wrap on it, it would ruin the painting that I've already done if I didn't wait for it to dry first. And I've pre-tested this color to make sure it's about what I want by doing it right there, so that's still wet. I'm going to thin it out a little bit more as I go up, because I want it to kind of blend in with this sienna color that I've already created. Really kind of like the way the texture worked right here. Again, I have to work pretty fast because even though it's oil and it dries much slower than acrylic, that Galkyd medium makes it dry faster. And one reason I use it is it makes it even more transparent. And by the way, it's also important that you choose colors that are transparent colors. If your color has any white in it, it's not transparent, it's opaque, and it won't work for this technique very well. So you might have to test it out first if it's a transparent color or not, but it's pretty important that you're working with a transparent color if you want the undersurface to show through. And right here I'm adding a little bit more of the bluish. Notice I've got a little bit more blue on this corner. And since it's bluer towards the bottom, I'm going to add that towards the bottom. And okay, let's just go ahead and get this done. Okay, so looks a little bit strokey, but that's okay. Again, I'm going to have to paint out some of this, but I want to go gradually up. Okay. So, next step is, of course, to get the plastic wrap. And you want it to go on in sort of a crinkly manner. So I kind of purposely crinkle it up before I even put it down. Excuse me for bad camera work here, but my hands are preoccupied with this now. Okay. And so I just press that in with my hand. Make sure you've got enough plastic wrap already pre-cut before you try this. You don't want to be messing with this while it's drying. And then I've got this roller tool. You can just get that at a Home Depot or Lowe's, and you want to roll it out. Again, you want to make sure any painted areas that you're going around have already dried. Because I've done this before and just ruined something I painted, just had to put more work into it, but I'm impatient sometimes. Okay, let's see how this came out. It's a little bit more subtle than I want it to be, but that's okay. Notice how it's so much more pronounced down here. I might have to do this over again. I'm thinking it's just a little bit too subtle for my liking, but you get an idea of how this is done. And I hope this was informative, and I'll update you when I have some more work to show.